The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
And all I could think was, and he not only was he texting somebody throughout the film, but he got up 3 times during the movie, like went out and came back. And all I could think was, like, you don't need to pay $14 for this privilege. You could stay home and text people and like wander in and out of the room. And then right in front of us, like more in front of where my husband was sitting, there was a woman who like kept like checking her phone for something, like turning on some kind of timer. It was really bright and like noticeable.
Yep.
I was like, what on earth, people? Why do you come to the movie?
Yeah. The joy of going back into the theater, huh?
I know. This is the stuff that my wife hates, and she's like, I don't know why you enjoy it, because all you do is come out of the theater and you complain about the people around you.
You get used to watching something at home. It just makes these annoyances.
Well, I think
all the more, you know.
Right, because oh, can you pause this? I gotta go to the bathroom. You want another bucket of popcorn? I'll be right back.
You know what? It really, though, like I said, we go at 10 a.m. So, we usually go to the first showing of the day, whatever movie we're going to see. So normally that weeds out all the weirdos.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those people usually come later in the day, like large groups of people who like aren't really interested or who are messing around with their phones or whatever. But yeah, I was really struck by the large number of people who didn't seem to be completely engaged.
Be invested.
There's no etiquette anymore. That's the problem.
But I always try to suss out before the movie starts. Okay, are these preview talkers? Or are these movie talkers? And you can usually tell, by the tone of the conversation that you're hearing or whatever. Okay, they're going to quiet down once the movie starts, or they're never going to shut up. And maybe I should consider moving right now.
Yeah, or you shoot them over the shoulder glare.
Oh well, we always sit in the last row. I never sit anywhere where somebody can be behind me. I watch too many horror movies.
And you read the Pee Wee Herman report?
Yeah, I just don't like getting kicked the seat, That's
yeah, someone gets up in the middle of it.
My sweet spot is similar, but not all the way in the back. So if there's stadium seating, which our theaters are, I go on the last row on the bottom. So there's nobody behind me.
See,
I don't trust people in the back row. What are they doing back there?
Observing everyone else.
Yeah, apparently.
So we're talking about the Batman this week.
No, we're talking about movie theater seating.
Well, listen, when you're investing in a 3-hour movie, you want to be comfortable. So.
Well, yeah, that is the nice thing. And, my husband and son are both 6 feet plus. So
you got
to have like the leg room that you get with the recliners is very key for them.
Yeah. Word to the wise, don't order the big gulp.
This is a long movie.
And we can get into it, but there's a lot in it that I don't think really needs to be there.
I agree.
It just seemed a lot more complex than necessary. Too complex.
I think this movie was not as complicated as it thought it was.
Well, that goes without saying, but there's too many characters. It's setting up this big, long detective yarn that tries to intertwine this and this and confuse you by giving you red herrings. But that's not, and I know what they were trying to do. As Jeff said a couple of weeks ago, they're leaning on the detective noir type aspect of Batman by making it a whodunit and who's the pigeon and who's the rat. But I think it would have been even more entertaining if they had pared down that aspect of it.
I mean, I have many thoughts, but let's do the news before we start.
Well, what are we pairing up with the Batman?
This is actually your suggestion, but this is a favorite of mine.
So go ahead.
Yeah, what we do in the shadows.
I was asked point blank when I told my friend that was why would you pair that up with this? I said, because sometimes you got to counter program. You can't,
It's got bats, dude. Bats.
There you go. Not only that, we know going in that it's going to take itself very seriously.
This movie took itself way too seriously.
Oh man, you guys didn't like it.
Well, no.
Oh,
I'm not going to go as far already to say that I hated it. There were things I liked and things I didn't. So let's do the news.
That's a fair assessment. All right, so let's go. Let's get into it. News. Here we go. Nobody died this week, by the way. So
well, okay.
Well, nobody that we're going to mention.
Well, nobody notable. Yes, apparently people do die every day. Well, I guess maybe we will talk about one then. I Am Legend is getting a sequel. Now, this is the Will Smith movie from mid-aughts.
Based on the Richard Matheson story.
Yes.
And has been made twice before.
Yeah, well,
Omega Man was far superior, in my opinion, to I Am Legend.
And didn't they change? Wasn't the original creatures, like in this movie, they were vampires, right?
And I don't understand how their jaws can become dislocated once they're mutated. That was the big sticking point for me in the Will Smith.
Have you guys ever seen the Vincent Price one, The Last Man on Earth?
It's been a very, very long time.
So we actually owned that movie, and I watched it last fall with my son. I was actually struck this time around, first of all, by how much the characters are like zombies. And I know Romero cited Richard Matheson as an influence. Obviously the tone is a lot different. It's from the 50s. There's like a voiceover narration, which is really outdated, but has a lot of like good qualities. I actually am really fond of that Vincent Price version. So if you haven't seen it in a long time, you should go and check it out.
Okay. Well, we also have this one, which apparently Will Smith is coming back, as well as Michael B. Jordan. And all I can say is, didn't Will Smith's character die at the end of that movie?
He did he not?
Yes. How are we making the sequel? Is he going to be
at the end somebody shows up to like the safe haven, but I don't remember if Will Smith made it. No, he didn't make it. He died.
He didn't make it, right?
He died in the cellar of his,
his house. Turn out like Nick Frost and Shaun of the Dead and just be like one of these creatures of the night? That'd be like
are they going to cure him? Maybe he gets cured.
Right, because wasn't he a scientist?
But he found the cure at the end, so that was like the tragedy. And then the girl that he saved went to the safe haven with the cure, I think, if I remember it correctly.
I just found it. I know it made a ton of money. I think it made like almost $600 million. It was a hit, but I just find it weird that they would
so many years later pick up on it again.
Right. And how are you gonna do this with this character? So I guess we'll just keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, go watch the original with Vincent Price.
That's right, Last Man on Earth.
Or Charlton Heston. Don't discount the Omega Man.
We have not talked about that either. The Omega Man.
We all have to wear our silk scarves if we're doing Omega Man.
Okay, Jim. I don't know if you heard about this, but Alien is in the news yet again. Looks like we have another movie in development. This one with the filmmaker behind Don't Breathe and the new Evil Dead remake. I think he's also attached to this Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre that just dropped. Fede Alvarez, but he's been tapped to write and direct an original standalone Alien feature, and Ridley Scott is producing.
What happened to the TV show that they were planning on?
What happened to Neil Blomkamp's version? What happened to all these other? They just can't let this go. It's a franchise that needs to be milked. So it does sound like it is unconnected to any previous movie. So
of course.
Why
tie up any loose ends?
Don't even get me started on that. I guess that's another one we'll just have to keep an eye on, because maybe they'll do something good with it if it's closer in tone to the original.
I think they were getting somewhere very interesting if they were to make a third movie based on Covenant with the Michael Fassbender character, the android.
You would have to do some serious convincing to get.
I really wanted that to come to its fruition and tie in somehow to the first Alien from 1979, but they never made it.
They tried really hard. And then the last is this is a feel good news, which is Studio Ghibli has announced they're doing a 2022 fan fest, and they will be releasing 7 of their movies back into theater.
Yep.
So this is more of a public service announcement to anybody out there, because I'm going to say most people have not seen these in the theater. I know, Christine, you're lucky enough to, live in a sprawling metropolis where you have film festivals all the time, the Music Box and places like this. But Princess Mononoke, Ponyo, The Cat Returns, Kiki's Delivery Service, Only Yesterday, Howl's Moving Castle, and Spirited Away. They're all going to be re-released in the theater, Japanese and English dubbing. And a lot of them are going to come with exclusive bonus content.
Nausicaa's not on that list?
Nausicaa is not on there. That would be nice to see Nausicaa. And maybe if this is popular, they'll do another round.
G-Kids usually does do a big theatrical re-release every year. G-Kids is the company now that now distributes Studio Ghibli stuff in the US. They also distributed Belle, which was Mamoru Hosada's new film. We've talked about a couple of his movies, Mirai and Summer Wars. That actually I just found out is going to be released on streaming in May. So if you were not able to see it in the theater, it's going to be out in a couple of months to watch. You guys should not miss it. It's really good.
So there you go. That's all the news I have, unless you came across anything.
No.
I spent too much of my time doing Batman research. You'd mentioned it before. There's some things that are very likable in this movie, and there's some things that could be addressed. It is
good.
3 hours.
Okay. I'm hoping that you brought some comic perspective, because I have nothing in terms of that.
Again, we mention this every week, which I am not a huge DC fan. You mentioned it was Super Friends. Like that was like your gateway drug into Super Friends and the DC universe, and yet it didn't make me run out and want to read Batman comics. But I do have some information.
When I was a kid, I pictured stodgy old men with glasses reading DC comics.
that was like their target market.
That was their target market. It was like the CBS network.
Or very small brunette girls, because I'm actually much more of a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan.
Alrighty, so there you go. Put on your stuffy glasses.
Yeah.
Stop. Apparently,
that's
Jim's already got preconceived notions.
I know. See, I'm reading glasses.
Oh, you got glasses on? You must be a Batman fan.
Obviously.
Look. She's like Clark Kent. You put the glasses on. It's like, where's Superman?
A different person.
Yeah. Where's your Hawkman? Where's your Hawkman figurine? I don't see.
Did you see the opening? Did you see the
montage
of all the movies coming out?
Yep.
And it actually says 2022, and someone in the theater says, "That's all coming out this year." Yeah, that's.
Did you catch really quickly at the end of that the banner? Please come see something other than Batman.
I mean, everyone in my family is excited for The Flash. Personally.
Yeah, my son is, because he's a fan of the TV show. Maybe DC's doing something good, which is they're giving up on continuity and they're just trying to make good movies.
I want to talk about this in the context of the new Batman film. This is actually something I want to address, because one thing I think that has happened over the last 40 years is that the Frank Miller Batman aesthetic has become completely dominant.
Yes, very much.
And
I agree.
First, from the Dark Knight Returns, the comic, and then Christopher Nolan's film versions drew very heavily from Year One, which Frank Miller wrote, and they really kept that like Frank Miller sort of super dark, very nihilistic, hyper masculine aesthetic. And because Nolan's films are so popular, I think that's really become like the de facto way of looking at Batman. And I want to say that I think that this is unfortunate. Even though Nolan's films actually have a little more humor, a little more levity than this one does. This is one of the most humorless movies I've ever seen.
I got one joke.
Was it the thumb drive?
The thumb drive. And I chuckled at that.
But I want to know who this movie is for. Because if DC's goal is to create fans that are going to grow up and love Batman when they're adults, if my son was not 15, I wouldn't have brought him to this.
I brought mine, and I realized my mistake about 5 minutes in to the movie because it was like I was watching Seven from David Fincher.
It is.
But I think it's not like, who are they making this movie for? That's what I want to know. Because the thing that Marvel has done, and I'm not as big of a Marvel fan, but I think that they've done this well, is they've now created a whole new generation of fans that are going to love their properties into adulthood. And I think DC is blowing it because it doesn't seem like this is made for, like, say, a whole family to enjoy. It is made for like a very specific subset of adult fans who have a very specific idea of what Batman is.
Absolutely. And what really confuses me is the dictum, because I did read a little bit of background on this. The dictum that Warner Brothers gave to Matt Reeves that it needs to be PG-13. And he said in turn that he never envisioned it as being an R. But this is
right on the edge of being an R movie.
Well, without the blood. I think if they did have bloodshed in it, then it would be an R. If there was one more drop of blood, I think it would tip it over into the R-rated category.
Even if you don't see blood, like, there's a ton of torture. There's a ton of implied violence.
Yeah, it's like Saw and Seven meets Batman.
You know, seriously, if my son wasn't a teenager, I would have just looked at the preview and be like, let me watch this first before I take you to see this. I think that this is not a movie, you know, for people to become fans of Batman. This is for existing fans.
I agree with you in the sense that, yes, I feel that I didn't really have high expectations, but as we got into this, I was very excited to see this version of Batman. I'm going to lay it right out. I enjoyed this immensely. I was tickled pink. When the Batmobile shows up, I looked around me and I was like, this may be the greatest thing I've ever seen right now. Like, I really was into it. And then it just kept going. The reason that it is 3 hours long is because it is two movies. You got one storyline going, and then it abruptly ends, and then we have another 45, 50 minutes. My son, who is 19 and grew up with the Marvel characters, doesn't really, you know, we went to go see Man of Steel. I told this story on the air. Man of Steel, we walked out of there, and I was so incensed because exactly what Christine is saying, which is the Dark Knight has infiltrated everything about superheroes, from the Punisher to Wolverine. Everything's got to be dark and gritty. And yes, this guy is broken. He's out there beating the crap out of people because it's therapy. It's therapeutic for him. He's got issues. And, you know, the Superman does not need to be dark. And yet the Man of Steel goes out of their way to have him fisticuffs and destroying the city with Zod. He breaks his neck at the end. I hated that movie. You can easily do a superhero movie and not lean into that. But in this regard, I loved what they did here.
What did your son think? He
has not seen it yet, but he is dying to see this. And I truly believe that when he does see it, he's going to love it.
The other thing for me that didn't quite work, and again, like, I don't think that Bruce Wayne needs to be like completely humorless, is that I really enjoyed Robert Pattinson in Tenet. I was absolutely charmed by him.
Yeah, and we walked out of the theater going, this guy can pull off being Batman after seeing him in that.
Right. And that is not the Robert Pattinson that is in this movie. And obviously, it's not his fault. It's the script. But, like, this is Robert Pattinson emo boy.
Yes,
well, this is what I like about it. I think Pattinson is my favorite Batman.
I agree.
Point. I think that he is actually unique in his portrayal in Bruce Wayne, because he's been even in the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan movies, he's the playboy because he's got to play that part as Bruce Wayne. But this is the first time that you've seen him as broody as Batman is.
Because he's only 2 years into this. He's up to this point, we've always seen Batman portrayed as a middle-aged white guy, privileged, that has everything handed to him. He knows it all. This guy's still trying to figure crap out. He doesn't even know who he is. He's hiding away. He's a recluse. And I did read that he leaned heavily into Kurt Cobain as kind of his role model of somebody who just had an art that he wanted to do. He got thrust into the limelight. He became famous and he wanted nothing to do with it. And I'm going to say that he is Batman, in that Bruce Wayne is his disguise that he just puts on.
And I liked the fact bringing in the detective aspect where he's like kind of milling about these crime scenes. I thought that was humorous because it kind of shows how ridiculous it is to have a guy dressed up like this walking around your crime scene.
The humor comes into all the other guys looking at. Yeah, at one point, because first of all, how did we not know that Jeffrey Wright was playing Gordon? Because did we not
know this? What, isn't he in the trailer?
I had no clue. That he was playing Jim Gordon. So I was thrilled beyond belief, and I love the chemistry between the two of them. Because here's the one thing: they don't go and give you the clumsy, clunky retelling origin. He just is Batman. And you do kind of get a little bit of the backstory and Alfred or whatever, but we don't have to retread that yet again. And I think they learned that from Spider-Man, which is stop telling me how, Uncle Ben died and you have to,
I was so glad they did not have the slow motion pearls falling to the pavement. And I was like, please don't do the pearls again. Please don't do the pearls. And they didn't. But I like the fact that Gordon is his one lifeline. So when Batman shows up at these crime scenes, every police officer there wants to arrest him.
Yes.
Like, what is this guy doing here?
He's a vigilante.
What is this clown doing here?
I thought that's where the humor came from. Was these guys are like, what is this? Good cop, badish, crazy cop?
But at the same time, when he's thrust into the light of these crime scenes, he looks kind of ridiculous and out of place in his outfit.
Well,
but
that's Eddie.
When he's beating the shit out of bad guys and like you hear his footsteps and they're like spurs on the concrete show up from the darkness, he is actually scary when he comes out of the dark. Yeah. So I think those aspects I liked. I liked Batman in this movie. I didn't like the movie necessarily itself.
But I think that Batman in general, go back to Christian Bale. It's a great buildup. But the minute he's in the bat suit, it kind of takes on a silly level. And especially when he does that goofy Batman voice. Like it loses some kind of credibility because right now, regardless of how much you want to ground this in reality, the minute this guy's in that suit, walking around, hanging out with people, talking, eating donuts, it's kind of like, oh, what's going on? But you mentioned this. I love the bat suit, by the way. It just looks like something somebody be able to put together, and no nipples.
I want to say I think I expected a lot from this, not just because it's a Batman movie, but because I really liked Matt Reeves' take on Planet of the Apes. He directed the last two Planet of the Apes films, and I thought he did a great job with those.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I think everything about this movie it's kind of like going back to the Nightmare Alley problem. Everything goes on just a little bit too long. Every time Batman turns his head, there is dramatic music.
Oh, I love the music.
Yeah, the score, I thought.
The soundtrack, Michael Giacchino was.
Yes, it's a very good score, but like every head turn doesn't warrant,
But to me, that's very comic booky. It's like, but
I think that actually helps build the mystique because they bring him into the light in these scenes with the police officers, but they need to also make him foreboding enough. And I really liked that. It reminded me of the early Godzilla score with the one or two deep, dark notes whenever he shows up, and they managed to make the Batmobile scary.
Well, Batmobile, like I said, when the Batmobile shows up, I am like that whole chase scene.
Well, what's funny? This ties into next week's episode, but Matt Reeves actually took inspiration from Christine on the Batmobile.
It's there because it's scary. When that thing revs up, you're like. Because up to this point, they also leaned heavily into Neil Adams' original drawings from the 60s of the Batmobile, which was a lot more street level. Because the guy's driving around in a thing that looks like a bat, you're going to draw attention to yourself.
And it's a freaking Dodge Charger. How cool is that? It's the General Lee. Batmobile is the General Lee.
He had that horn, that would have been great.
I just picture it coming out of the flames. Woo-ha! As he's coming after the Penguin. So yeah, I think it's overstuffed. The Penguin does not need to be here. He is a superfluous character. Save him for the next movie.
But again, they're setting him up. They're kind of creating this universe, and in the past, and they did film some of this stuff in Chicago. But you go back to the Christopher Nolan. And it looks like Chicago. This Gotham, I mean, outside of Tim Burton's, which was so fantastical, this looks like a dirty, grimy sleazy, like what you think Gotham is. For he does the narration at some point, and he's like, what am I doing? I'm not making a difference at all. This place is just falling apart. And you see drop heads, they're doing this drug or whatever. And we get this whole backstory of the Falcones and Maronis, which if you watch the Gotham TV show, those characters play heavily into that whole storyline. They're the ones just that read the
Batman comics.
Put in the comics, right? But again, they really haven't been presented in the movie versions at all. They've always leaned heavily into the Joker and all these other fantastical bad guys. And Batman, for better or for worse, is a very boots on the ground, just trying to. He's like, I can't be everywhere at once. And they show this montage of all this crap, unfolding in the city. So he saved some old lady or a cat out of the tree, but look at the other 12 people that were killed because I wasn't there. I can't do it all.
But the con to having all these characters, these mob related characters, goes to Christina's point of before as to who they're making this movie for, because my son was excited to go in because it's Batman. Everybody knows Batman, but he was done after the first hour and kept asking me, when is this close to being over?
Yeah, that sucks. That's a telltale.
He had no interest
right
in John Turturro or anybody else,
But if you put him in front of probably the Tim Burton Batman, he would eat it up.
I'm sure he would. Maybe even the Schumacher, much to my chagrin.
But, you know what? People give the Schumacher version a lot of flack, but I just want to say that Schumacher had his own vision and he executed it. You know what I mean? He had an aesthetic,
he did,
and he leaned into it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Well, hey! I really like the first one, the Val Kilmer one.
But he clearly wanted to go back to like the Adam West type. Sure. Batman. Because this actually comes into something that we've been dodging around, where Jeff keeps saying, well, Batman is this, Batman is that, but Batman is not one thing. And that's like, for a lot of people, Adam West is Batman. Okay, I know that this breaks the heart of every Frank Miller fanboy.
No, you're
but
right.
Adam West
you are
is
absolutely
Batman
right.
to a whole generation of people, because that was the first Batman that they saw.
Yes, correct.
And
I agree with you.
All these different depictions of Batman, a lot of times, they just reflect like something else in society. And depending on when you first see it, the first Batman that you see, that's your Batman. But that is not the one true.
Well,
Batman.
You could say that with any long-running franchise.
Correct.
Bond, Godzilla, anything like
Spider-Man. We've already seen.
But I would like to see a happy medium between The Dark Knight and Adam West.
I agree. I would like that too.
I think that the Lego movies did a great job with Will Arnett.
Yes.
Binding that line where he's funny, but he's not.
But again, I would love to see,
he takes himself too seriously.
He never actually refers to himself as Batman. He refers to himself as Vengeance in this movie. But to say that line like Adam West, like we did last week, I am Vengeance.
But I think actually there is one depiction of Batman that did achieve this happy medium, and it's the Batman animated series. I think
here we go. I've never seen this. I have to watch it.
What?
I have to watch it.
You have to
I've
watch
never
the Batman
seen it.
animated
All right,
series.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you 100% because that he can be scary, but it still has levity in it.
Yes.
I agree with you. Yes.
It has a really nice balance of tone where there's the mystery aspect. It's dark. You can see Bruce trying to take himself a little too seriously. Characters around him kind of pushing him on that, being like, give me a break. Like, who do you think you are, kind of thing. And the Joker, obviously played by Mark Hamill on that show, is incredible. And what he has in that show, and obviously it was an animated series, it played in the afternoon, it was meant for kids, but I started watching that as someone in my 20s, and I loved it. And it has a sense of playfulness, especially about the Joker, I think, that has lacked overall in film depictions that have come after Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's version was dark, but there was still a little bit of that sort of Cesar Romero playfulness to him. Like, you don't see that anymore after The Dark Knight.
No, and I don't think you're going to see it. Well, even after Joaquin Phoenix's take on it. On the
right,
character.
which is like the Joker is a little bit of a playful character, right? People have really honed in on this homicidal aspect of him, but sometimes he's not out to kill everybody. He's just like a chaos element, you know?
I wouldn't trust him.
You don't trust him, but there's actually a line in The Dark Knight where Heath Ledger's Joker says, like, I'm a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do if I got it, right? And I think that really summarizes who the Joker is. And I want to see a little more of that playful element balanced with the darkness. The Joker is supposed to be a clown.
We didn't really get a taste of what he is going to be going forward in this universe.
Yet again, we have to go out of our way to introduce him. There's a deleted scene where Batman actually goes to visit him, so they do already have a past relationship. It was cut, but it was more of a Clarice Hannibal Lecter kind of a thing where he's conferring with him in his jail cell, trying to figure out why the Riddler is targeting him specifically.
So we haven't really gone down this road with the Riddler or Catwoman yet, but the plot is basically the Riddler is trying to kill all these figures that are corrupt in Gotham City, and he's doing it in a very serial killer-esque way. Well, all these gruesome deaths, and he sees the Batman as an ally. So he's leaving him cards and clues, and look at what we're doing. And this is what the Riddler thinks of that he has a relationship with Batman, that they're working towards the same goal.
But he's setting him,
So that's basically the plot of the movie, with all these different characters thrown in that kind of take away from that main thrust of the supposed relationship between the Riddler and Batman. So you have Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle, Catwoman. And then you have Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Again, a red herring that they're setting up for different things, and he really doesn't serve that much of a purpose here. The real bad guy is John Turturro as Falcone. And the Riddler, in a nice twist, you think for a few minutes that he knows Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne, but no, it turns out that his last victim was supposed to be Bruce Wayne. So that was a nice twist. And I really like Paul Dano. How can you not like Paul Dano? But if they had just focused more on the Batman Riddler aspect of this movie, I think it would have been more palatable. Still probably wouldn't have been my favorite Batman movie, but again, I love Pattinson in the role.
I want to mention I really liked Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman because I felt that she played one thing that I've obviously Michelle Pfeiffer is the best Catwoman. That should go without saying.
The kid.
But that's a completely different kind of Catwoman. But I did not like what I didn't like about Anne Hathaway's version was I thought she played her like too slinky, like sort of like throwing her sexuality out. Whereas Zoe Kravitz, obviously she's gorgeous and she has this sexuality, but it's not like in your face.
Right.
She just is. And, it's just part of the character. She actually plays the character in a very understated way that I really liked.
You see, to me, it didn't seem like she was necessarily Catwoman. Her name, yes, was Selina, but she could have been another character. Like it wasn't like an iconic kind of a Catwoman-esque. She had cats, yeah. I'll give her that.
Okay. Am I the only one who thinks that they could have easily caught the Riddler if they just like staked out stationery stores? Because those greeting cards were very specific. Like, where's he buying these things at?
I think he's making those greeting cards.
I
think he's taking the time and he's
that's a lot of work going on there.
That's handcrafted work there.
That's a talent. So
I don't know if anybody else had 1984 flashbacks with the little rat cage thing. When that happened, my son leaned over and held my hand because I hate rats.
No. Oh, okay. He was there for you.
He was like, gotcha. It's okay, Mom. Yeah. But and actually going back to that again, that is horrific. You don't need to actually see what happens.
No, to know.
But to know what's going to happen, and it's horrible. I don't see how DC can build the next generation of Batman fans if they're going to make the movies like this.
Yeah, I agree.
Really don't.
I agree.
But again, a whole new generation will grow up, and this will be their Batman. And
if they go see it, that's the thing.
It made 120 million over the 3 days?
But again, like in our theater, there wasn't a single kid, not a single kid in a Batman movie.
Yeah, there was one other kid in my theater, and I heard grumblings from that kid too, and he was all the way over at the other side of the theater.
Right. So it's like our kids who are Jim's son's age, not right, 9,
11.
10, 11. Yeah. Like that's sort of the age when you should be falling in love with Batman, you know? And if you're going to a movie and you're thinking this is super boring and I would rather go home and watch Spider-Man or whatever, then the DC has blown it. They have lost a generation of fans.
I don't know. I guess time will tell. I don't know.
I don't think that making money is necessarily an indicator of like future fandom or quality. So
no, because I know, my son and his friends are huge Marvel MCU. They can't wait for the new movie to drop. It's never once made them run to the comic store and buy a Spider-Man comic or an Avengers comic.
Whereas my son is a huge, huge fan of Batman and Superman. And actually DC Comics in general. He watches all the DC shows and he reads
that's where I think DC has done a lot better, which is building the TV universe on a TV. Yeah.
And I don't understand why they can't translate that into
this is one film. Director's take. This is like
but look at all the Snyder films. I mean, you were just talking about how they were all, super dark. The Superman's super dark,
for whatever reason, DC thinks that this is where I did not like Man of Steel at all because they made Superman.
Speaking of that, let's talk about that because some background on the Batman here. Originally, it was meant to be an Affleck Batman movie. Yep. So with totally different plot, it wouldn't have been Ben Affleck stuck in this movie, but it would have been Deathstroke as the bad guy. And that's what they set up at the end of Snyder's cut of Justice League with Joe Manganiello as Deathstroke. Can you imagine how cookie cutter TV movie lame that would have been? I wasn't invested in the Affleck Batman at all. And I don't think I would have been interested to see a standalone. Neither was he because he dropped out of this.
Right.
Until they chose Reeves. But before they settled on Pattinson, who is a Batman fan himself, and he was more attractive to Warner Brothers because he'd never appeared in an MCU movie, which is unlike most actors on the face of the earth. They were also considering Nicholas Hoult, who was in X-Men.
I did see that.
Armie Hammer. Luckily, they did not go with him. And Kick-Ass, Aaron Taylor Johnson. But I think Pattinson has the best jaw for the cowl. He's definitely got the best jaw out of those. And here's something that made me chuckle. Jonah Hill was looking at either the Riddler or the Penguin, but apparently he wanted more than they were even paying Pattinson. So he dropped out of talks.
I think that's always been the case, though. The side villain always gets more money.
Yeah.
Bring it up. I don't know. How come no one's ever talked about the level of guano that has got to be dropping from the ceiling of that Batcave? Is he insured this in computers? Because that's disgusting. He comes out, he's got bat guano all over the shoulders.
The other thing is, I think I would have liked to, in a movie that's too long, I would have liked to seen some other characters cut, and I would have liked to seen a little more Andy Serkis.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about him.
Yeah, no, I did like him immensely. Can I just ask, though, because I went with my friend to the theater, and I missed this completely. So Alfred takes the brunt of the explosion that was meant for Bruce. And when Bruce goes to the hospital to see him, they cut to like an overhead shot for like a second. And my buddy swears that Alfred had lost his legs. Did either of you catch that?
I did not.
No.
I don't. No. Neither did I. And I didn't look it up, but I'm just like, usually I'm pretty astute when I'm watching this stuff, but I mean, it could be, it could not have been. Who knows? Who knows what they're doing?
But yeah, he was just, he came in and out. 45 minutes have gone, okay, let's have an Alfred scene, and then you'll see him in another 45 minutes.
He probably filmed all of his stuff in 2 days.
Yeah.
Is my guess. So, I did like the fact that Catwoman did mention Bloodhaven, which is where Dick Grayson resides as Nightwing. But that means, because again,
that means there might be Nightwing, which would be cool.
There could be a Nightwing, which means that Robin did exist, but they were only together for less than 2 years. I mean, you mentioned year one for the Nolan, but I think that the Long Halloween and year one influences this a lot as well. And especially the style, the camera angles, the cinematography on this stuff, I thought was spot on. We already talked about the soundtrack, which I was blown away by. But even there was like a little cutaway scene when they were in the guy's apartment at the beginning, and the word "hush" was written over, and
Hush,
I'm like, that's another very well-known Batman storyline.
Hush is great. Long Halloween's actually my favorite Batman storyline of all time. These storylines are all kind of dark. They're not. Yes, but again, there's a little element of playfulness in Long Halloween that is not present here. A lot of the darkness of Long Halloween comes from Tim Sale's art. He has the scariest Joker I've ever seen. He's like all teeth. His mouth is like this huge elongated thing, and it's like full of teeth. And when I saw the animated version of it, I was really disappointed that they didn't at least try to aspire to Tim Sale's art style.
Now you're talking about your Jim's going back to I Am Legend with the unhingeable jaws, because you would need giant jaws to accommodate those teeth. That looks great in still illustrations.
This is the thing that really gets me, though, is that we talked about this with Superman. And these are characters, Superman and Batman are two of the oldest long-running characters in comics. Batman first appears in 1939. And these are characters that have literally almost a century of story behind them. So why are they not better served on screen? Why don't they draw from these existing storylines? I don't get it. I mean, you do see Marvel going into their comic storylines. Yeah, they make some changes. Maybe they make modifications, but they go into their comic storylines and put them on screen. You don't see this for DC. I don't understand it. I mean, Superman especially, they've just struggled, I think, to do a really great job with Superman overall on screen.
I agree. I think the Superman has been...
Yeah, he's a tough character, though, because we were talking about this before. He's the invulnerability aspect of Superman.
Yeah,
you have to always bring him down because nobody can beat him. So there's always the factor of you have to make him vulnerable. He's a tough sell.
But even that Boy Scout thing you just said, Jeff, that's from Frank Miller. That is Frank Miller's idea of Superman. Superman the Boy Scout.
Well, I think it goes even back to Donner's Superman.
Sure,
they go out of their way to give you his origin story. He's just this bumble kid from the out in the sticks, trying to make his way in the city, and he just happens to be an alien with superpowers.
But I think, look, you can make a character that is super strong and positive. We saw it in Wonder Woman, right?
Yes, I think Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman, hits those tones perfectly.
We're not thinking of Shazam either.
Well, Shazam even more so, because that really leaned into the comedy aspect. And as a non-Shazam DC fan, I loved it. Now, there are probably DC fans out there who were taken aback that they treated that character that way.
But what I'm saying is that, I think Wonder Woman is a good example. Patty Jenkins' version of Wonder Woman is a good example of where you have a character who's extremely strong, like Superman. She's basically invulnerable.
Except when it comes to Steve.
It's a positive character, and yet they managed to make her story dramatic enough to engage the viewer, mostly by showing that the struggle comes not from her personal vulnerability, but from the struggle to protect the people around her. And I think that's what you need to do with Superman, right? It's not about his personal vulnerability. It's about his need to protect people. It's about, how can I get there in time? How can I stop this from happening? How can I keep people safe.
Yeah,
you know?
I think they did hit on that in Man of Steel, because that's where Zod realizes that is his weakness, is that he cares about these people. Yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason they, and again, you go back into the animated Batman, Superman, the same thing. The Adventures of Superman
It's great.
are fantastic.
Yeah, you really, if you haven't watched these animated series, you should really go and watch them, because I think this is where the sweet spot is, where there's the real essences of these characters, of Batman, of Superman, and they've managed to find the balance really, really well in these shows. And I don't understand why this can't get on screen. This movie, I thought, was just, look, I'm a horror writer, and I was like, this is like too much. You know what I mean?
And the other thing about this is that it's distanced from the DCEU, as they call it, the DC extended universe.
They definitely are going.
This is its own
Joker.
reality,
it's its own thing. Yeah,
there's no Superman here. There's no other heroes. So it's, but like just I said, Batman.
They did reference Bloodhaven. I don't know. Yeah, I think DC is just like, you know what? We can't try and tie these all together. We saw what a debacle Justice League was. So let's just do standalone stories. This guy wants to come and he wants to do his own take on this character. Let it be. We heard after the Joaquin Phoenix Joker that there were 2 more Joker movies in development.
With him? With Joaquin Phoenix?
No.
So maybe the Flash movie will try to tie this all together. Who knows?
I don't know. But I'm not invested in any of these characters, so I can watch this and appreciate it for what it was, as far as the filmmaker and everyone involved, and not walk away going, well, that's not my Batman. I can watch a Star Wars movie and be like, that is not my Luke Skywalker. That is not the character I grew up with, or that's how I want him to act.
Right.
I don't care about this when it comes to
that's what I mean when I say
characters.
I don't think that this is not a movie that was made for kids or for families. This was a movie made for a very specific subset of existing Batman fans, to give them the Batman that they want.
And time will tell what they do with this, or how it plays to future generations, because it's going to be forever now on HBO Max and what have you.
Right? Yeah. Anybody catch the William Shakespeare bust in the Wayne Manor?
No.
Well, y'all know it's a reference to Adam West. That's how they got down in a Batcave.
Yeah.
He lifted up the head and there was a secret button that opened up the pole.
Honestly, like, how did you see anything in this movie? Like,
it is very dark. That is one friend my friend said.
Shrouded in shadow.
It's red. It's red. That's all it is. It's like the Matrix is green, Batman is red now. But to your point, Jeff, about spin-offs and such, we already alluded to the fact that there's going to be more Penguin with Colin Farrell attached. So he's going to get his own series on HBO Max. There's going to be another Gotham series also on HBO Max. I don't see.
GCPD was already wasn't that a series?
Yeah. So they're doing it again. And this is going to be a trilogy with Robert Pattinson.
Of course.
So there's going to be 2 more movies.
Do any of you know about Ivan Reitman's Batman that never came to fruition?
Is this like the Nicolas Cage Superman?
No, Bill Murray. Bill Murray.
Are there Polaroids with Bill Murray in the Batman suit?
This never got past the talking stages, but after Meatballs, 1981, well before the Burton, the studios were looking for somebody to helm a Batman movie, and they went to Reitman. They gave him the job. He wanted Bill Murray as Batman and Eddie Murphy as Robin. And it never went beyond talks, because apparently Eddie Murphy really wanted to be the Batman. So, and Bill Murray said, I'll never be Robin to anybody. So imagine what kind of talk we'd be having right now if that ever came out. So I'm going to tell you right now.
That would go to the absolute controversy about casting Michael Keaton in the Burton film.
Well, imagine we've talked about this many times. In this social media world we live in now, that would be shut down in a heartbeat. People would probably be protesting. Mr. Mom as Batman. Are you
and he was good.
Me?
Well, people were protesting Pattinson. It's always going to happen, regardless.
It goes back to it's my Batman. I have an idea of what Batman is.
Yeah, and it's not the guy from Twilight.
Right.
Correct. I don't need no shiny Batman.
And I do want to mention, I know I said this to you guys a few weeks ago, but I want to mention to you again and to our listeners, I really, really recommend that you read a book called The Caped Crusade by Glenn Weldon. It's about Batman. It's about Batman's history, but it's also about the culture that has grown up around Batman, and sort of how Batman has influenced culture and vice versa. It's really, really interesting. Glenn Weldon's a great writer. It's very fun. It's not like dry nonfiction. So if you're interested in this character at all, I really recommend that you read this book.
And the only thing I'll say, which is there's over 10 variations of this character that have been portrayed on screen and in television over the years, and it does spread a broad spectrum. You do have the Adam West, you do have the Will Arnett Lego Batman, you do have Christian Bale's, which I absolutely love that series, and then you have this. So again, one of those may be your definitive version of this character. I really, really like this movie. I was invested in it. It is way too long. I felt that there should have been a way to somehow, if you're going to go down to the idea that there's a stool pigeon or this rat, carry it through to the end of the movie. Don't give me 2 hours in, wrap up that storyline, and then continue to tell it for another hour, because now you're like, all right, where are we going now? What are we doing now? It just seems almost like it was a tack on. I'm still giving this 4.5.
Wow.
I am giving this. I know.
Wow.
I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was well done, and I went in with very low expectations.
Can you repeat that? Did I hear that correctly?
4.5 buckets.
Wow.
Maybe this is my Batman.
Maybe it is.
You know, when The Dark Knight came out, that was seminal. That was, I mean, every one of my friends in college, we all own a copy of that. We were Batman.
Well, this is fantastic. This is what this show is for. Is for, for us to hash these things out and to give our differing opinions.
I really thought you guys would have liked it a little bit better. I know it's long, and that's a detriment to it. The pacing is a little.
Oh,
much.
yeah. The pacing, it was terrible. And maybe I would have enjoyed it a little more if my son wasn't with me, but I was kind of, in any movie I see through his eyes. And I try to figure out what he's seeing. So I was cringing and wincing through most of this. And it was really long for me as well. I loved Pattinson. I loved his take on Batman. And as I said before, I believe that he is my favorite take on Batman thus far, not having seen the animated series, mind you. But I didn't like the movie. I liked Paul Dano as the Riddler, but again, did not like the movie. I thought it was too long, too meandering. And yeah, I get it that there's corruption in Gotham City, but
you don't need to get paid.
I don't need to be hit over the head for 3 hours about it.
Or duct taped to your
I'm
face.
going to give it, just for Pattinson alone, I'm going to give it 3.5 buckets.
Okay, that's still pretty high for you. I'm sorry to say. That is pretty high for you.
So I am a huge Batman fan. I hope that I've indicated that throughout this conversation. No fault to the performances. I thought everybody was great in this film. Like, everyone was well cast. There wasn't a character where I was like, oh, this person shouldn't have played this part. I was absolutely thrilled to see John Turturro, who has been one of my favorite actors ever since I saw Barton Fink. I think he's just such a great actor. Kind of wasted on this role. By the way, the mask on the Riddler, I just want to mention this because everybody gave this to Nolan for putting the mask on Tom Hardy, but this is basically the same thing happening here with Dano and the Riddler.
I liked it though. They were definitely leaning into, and he's already come out. The Zodiac Killer was his influence, but I enjoyed his performance immensely.
No, like I said,
more so with the mask off.
Everybody was great. I'm just saying, people who are always talking about Tom Hardy talking through the mask, and Dano sounds pretty much exactly the same because you're making an actor talk through a mask. I kind of struggle with this because I wanted to love it. I love Batman. And like I said, I like Matt Reeves. I think he did a great job with those Planet of the Apes movies. But it's overstuffed. It takes itself way too seriously. I think that some judicious editing might have made a big difference. Also, maybe just the occasional touch of levity would have served it well. I'm going to say 3. It was just okay.
And that's still better than I thought that you were going to give.
Yeah, I was waiting.
I was leaning toward a 2 3/4. I'm gonna say 3. It's not okay. This is like Nightmare Alley. It's not bad. It's just not really good either. You know what I mean? It's just not. And
do you remember what you gave Nightmare Alley, by the way?
I think I gave it a 3.
Okay.
Because for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because for the same reason. Because is there anything fundamentally like bad about this movie? No, it's a well-made film. Everybody's doing a good job. You know, everybody clearly knows what they're doing, not just the performers, but like the director, the cinematography. Everybody's doing a good job. And it's partially set in Chicago. I have to give it a quarter of a bucket just for having seen the shot in Chicago.
Yeah. New York will have those seawalls in 10 years, by the way. So
this is just a lot of movie.
It is a lot of movie.
Yeah,
it is.
And I will tell everybody right now, don't sit through the credits.
I was like a marathon runner getting out of there. I'm like, okay, let's go. It's over.
Yeah. It's a little tease to the website that the Riddler drops his. We can put it in the show notes. I'll send it to you, Jim, or whatever. But it does lead you to some online URL that has clues and games that you can kind of continue to play. The little detective sleuth.
I thought it was completely overstuffed, but I did appreciate them trying to bring a horror movie aspect into it. It just seemed out of place in a Batman movie. The Riddler was a step too far. He belonged more in a Saw sequel, or
This is, I mean, if nothing else, there's a lot of meat to chew on here. So, and like I said, I think this will really ignite a debate about, what is Batman and what is appropriate for Batman and what isn't. And, that conversation just kind of continues. Look at how long we've talked about this.
Yeah, it's almost as long as the movie.
We haven't always spent as much time talking about the film directly, but we're talking about all these tangential things because that's part of what Batman is. Like Batman is very ingrained in our culture, and everybody has a very specific idea of what Batman is. And
well, these superheroes are our Greek mythology. We can't wait to hear their latest exploits.
Yeah, I don't have that much flesh in the game because, like I said, I was never that invested in DC. So,
I
do what you will with Batman is my credo.
Looking at some Batman comics after this. So
we've given more than enough time to the Batman. We need some sustenance. Let's go to the concession stand. Maybe they have those bat-shaped calzones that I've been seeing commercials for.
Right.
Little Caesars. Let's go to the concession stand and let's come back for what we do in the shadows.
Batman.
This drive-in theater is radioactive. Now you can hear tonight's show on your AM car radio. Turn your ignition key to the accessory position. This will not drain your car battery. Now turn on your radio and zero in on the following AM station.
Golden Pure Creamery Butter, rich, flavorful, satisfying. That's what it takes for the finest buttered popcorn, and that's what we use. See for yourself why there's no Showtime treat to equal the crisp, delicious flavor of hot popcorn that's bathed in real melted butter. It's at the concession stand now.
Okay, we're back. What we do in the shadows. We're revisiting Taika Waititi this week. This means.
Co-directed by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, who both play characters in the film. We actually just watched this 3 months ago. So my husband was like, do you even need to rewatch this?
Yes, I do.
Like, yes, obviously. He's like, you could probably just riff off of your memory.
Shut up, I need to rewatch it.
We watch it a lot. I realize our listeners cannot see me, but I am wearing a What We Do in the Shadows Unholy Masquerade t-shirt. I love this movie beyond all reason. It's so much fun.
So this is a documentary that films the life of 3 flatmates who happen to be vampires leading up to this unholy masquerade ball. And that's basically what it is, showing the life of these 3 vampires. There is a 4th flatmate, actually, Peter, that lives in the basement.
Who is my favorite, by the way?
Who could be my favorite, too.
What is that? Count?
Nosferatu.
It's Nosferatu.
Right.
all the characters they had wanted to bring in different elements. So like Viago is more of an interview with the vampire type vampire. And obviously Vlad is supposed to be a Dracula type vampire.
Vlad the Poker?
Vlad the Poker.
Yeah.
There were quite a few times I laughed out loud, but by and large, I hate these type of I hate The Office. To me, it's cringeworthy. I don't know what it is about the style of this hidden camera crew that follows people around, and these people are constantly breaking the fourth wall, talking to the camera. It just drives me nuts. I don't like The Office. Whatever, keep going.
Did you not like this because you don't like the style?
I don't know. I did. You guys were like, you're gonna laugh your ass off, so I expected to be like on the floor crying. I wasn't quite to that level.
Well, here's the thing. I saw this years ago, when it first came out, not in the theater, but when it was available on video. Thought it was great. A very novel idea. I just loved the idea of the vampires living these mundane, everyday lives. And then the show came out, and of course, I jumped right on that. I actually enjoy the show more than I do the movie. Maybe because I like the characters better on the show, but I think the show is funnier than the movie. Yeah, it's different characters.
It's completely different.
It takes place in the U.S. for one thing, and it's Matt Berry is just hysterical. On the TV show.
The show is great. But to me, it's just like a different flavor of ice cream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really like them both because all the actors bring something completely different to the characters. In this film, Johnny Bruff, who plays Deacon, to me, he is so funny, like so ridiculous. Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement said they didn't so much direct this movie as kind of lead a meeting. They would have the script and they would come into a scene and they would sort of, by their dialogue, kind of, encourage the actor.
Yeah, I did read they had a script, but they didn't let anybody read it.
Yeah, the actors would then just start riffing.
Right.
And in the special features, that I have, there's like tons and tons and tons of footage.
125 hours they filmed.
Yeah, of stuff
that's 7 other movies.
Of stuff that and especially Johnny Bruff, he just he riffs and riffs and riffs and riffs, and he is so funny to me.
And that is, I think, one of the differences between the movie and the show is that you do get a sense that what you're looking at is mostly off the cuff stuff, where on the show it's much more of a scripted, strict thing. And I love the FX that they throw in here. And every once in a while, they hiss at each other and they fly up into the air.
Yeah. Like a little cat fight.
Yeah.
I love, I mean, one of my favorite things, I knew I was going to love this movie from the start. I did see it in theater, of course, because I have the music box. I love how the first 10 minutes is basically an argument about doing the dishes.
Which everyone can relate to, by the way.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever lived
supernatural powers.
If you've ever lived with another human,
Speaking of bat guano,
and the awkwardness of bringing it up in the conversation as well.
Yes, yeah.
Not everybody is pulling their weight around here.
Yeah.
Yes. I love so many things about this. I mean, they're kind of loser vampires, right? Peter is 8,000 years old. Do you think he'd be a little more together after so many years? But he just lives in the basement and waits for Viago to bring him a chicken. Well,
it makes you think, is that as you get older as a vampire, do you get more feral? Can you even help it? You just become more of a beast as the older that you get. Matter. Viago is going around and telling everybody that there's going to be a flat meeting. And he goes to Vlad and he opens the door and you see it's just like that scene in Dracula. Where Keanu Reeves is on the bed with the three brides of Dracula. And it looks like it's like a mile away. And then suddenly the door opens and it's a normal room. It's like, give me 10 minutes.
But when they go downtown, they ride the bus. They don't have any kind of money built up apparently after all these centuries, which really is counter to the idea of the vampire you usually see in film, where they've acquired all this wealth
because they're ageless,
all this kind of stuff. So these are really blue collar vampires that are just kind of like workaday vampires.
I definitely see this movie as every time you watch it, you're going to see something else. Kind of a thing that it just kind of keeps on giving. Yeah.
And obviously, I, like everybody in the movie, love Stu.
Stu is funny. The reddest human I've ever seen.
I'm sure you know about this. Stu was actually a friend of Taika's. He's not an actor. He came along and kind of just sort of played along with this, didn't realize that he was going to have such a big role.
That's what makes him so funny. He's just there, you know?
You're right, correct. Yeah, I agree with you. It's almost like he didn't even know there was a movie.
Yeah.
And Nick ends up being kind of a gift to these vampires, not because of himself, but because he brings Stu into their lives. And Stu does all these things and he helps them sort of like come into the 21st century, right? He's teaching them how to like send text messages on cell phones. He's showing them how to use a computer. And it's so adorable. They all love him.
Except for Jackie, because she's the Guillermo character, and she's very taken aback first that Nick has been turned into a vampire, and she's still waiting, just like Guillermo is in the show. The familiar, but she gets her own happy ending, which Guillermo hasn't gotten yet, unfortunately.
Well, that's the whole thing is like on the show, I know you don't have a reference for this, Jeff, but there's a scene in the first season where all the familiars meet and one of them is really old, you know, and you could tell he's like just still waiting, you know, and there's a like sort of an ongoing joke that the vampires never actually turn their familiars. Like the familiars keep doing all this scut work in the hope that someday they're going to be a vampire. And it never happens because why would you give up your familiar if you're a vampire?
I got him trained now.
Yeah.
It's Peter who actually turns Nick. It's such a great scene where Nick is running through the house and they're all kind of like popping out of the shadows. They come out of his backpack and they do all this different stuff. They're terrorizing him, right? And then he runs outside and then Peter like comes out.
Which is scary, right? But then once they realize, oh, Peter got him, poor guy. Then you see Jackie hosing the blood off the pavement the next day.
And I need to mention, because I love Rhys Darby, who is the alpha male of the werewolf.
The head werewolf.
They're werewolves, not swearwolves. I thought of you, Jim, because you don't like profanity.
Yeah, I appreciated that. And
they're always, every time they pass this group of werewolves, they antagonize them.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Vlad, as an aside to the camera, some shit's about to go down as they approach the werewolves.
And it's only because they antagonize the werewolves, because Rhys Darby, as the alpha male, is always trying to like keep them calm, like keep them cool, right? Not act out of hand. And it's so funny when one of them like starts to change and the other guy's like, do the breathing, count to 10, human again, count to 10, human again.
The funny thing about it though, is once they're werewolves, there's no competition. They would beat the vampires handily once they turn into, then they scatter and run as soon as they start to change into werewolves. And then poor Stu gets it. You see the flashback and he wakes up and it's black and white and you see him in his underwear and there's all these naked men standing over.
Except for the alpha male, who's the only one who wore his tracksuit pants.
Yes. Yep.
Because he told them, you have to wear your tracksuit pants. Your legs expand. That you wear the tracksuit pants, you have space in there. You wear the jeans, they just get torn off.
Sends him a werewolf.
Yes. I love this movie. Every time I watch it, I laugh. Like it's something new. Like when Nick was like talking about turning into a vampire and he's like, you know, I woke up and Peter was standing over me and he gave me some blood. And I thought it was just some German thing that these guys do.
Oh no, when they're out in the diner or whatever and he eats the fries, like, oh, don't do that, Vlad says. And then the next scene you see him spraying blood everywhere and he's like, this vampire thing is, it's like, I can't eat French fries anymore.
Yeah. Chips. And then later Viago's like, our friend Peter had a fatal sunlight accident. Like just the way he phrases it. When O'Leary and Minot, who are the police, show up, it's just the way Viago answers the door and he's like, hello, police.
Yeah.
Like, They're two of my favorite characters, by the way. They have their own show.
Wellington Paranormal. It's on HBO Max. Yep.
And it's really fun. I just love them because they have this absolute clueless quality in the face of.
It's very much like that. If you remember the X-Files episode, which was a spoof on cops, it's like, it's really a lot like that. And I love the scene where Deacon and Nick get into it and they turn into bats and Vlad's like, bat fight. Yeah.
This is such a fun movie. It's so rewatchable. But to go back to the previous film we were just talking about, a film that thought it was very complicated and really wasn't, had actually a very straightforward plot overall and took almost 3 hours to tell it. This movie is 85 minutes long. And there's actually like 7 separate plot lines in here that all get resolved by the end of the movie, which is amazing if you think about it. So like there's Nick, right, and his transformation into a new vampire, like his longing for acceptance by the group. There's Viago and his unresolved romance with Catherine. There's Jackie, who is a familiar who wants to be a vampire. There's Deacon's jealousy of Nick, which does get resolved at the end because he comforts Nick in his completely weird way after Stu dies. There's Vlad's jealousy / conflict with the Beast, Pauline, his ex-girlfriend. And then there's the werewolf story, which actually is pulled all the way through. You think it's going to be a random encounter, but it ends up pulling all the way through to the end of the story. And then there's the actual unholy massacre. So they do a lot in this movie, and somehow they keep track of all these plot threads and resolve them by the end.
Does your copy of the movie have the short film that this was based on?
It does. It does have the short film. And literally hours of quote unquote interviews with the different characters. There's tons of deleted scenes. It's just, there's so much stuff. It's literally a whole nother movie you could watch. There's also a commentary with Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, which honestly is not that great. Usually I love watching director commentaries, but they're both so laid back that they don't
takes it down a notch.
Yeah. What's funny, you say that because I watched the commentary for Thor Ragnarok with Taika Waititi, and it was one of the most boring commentaries I've ever listened to.
And here's where
they're just both so laid back that they don't, it's almost like they don't want to talk about their movie. Speaking of Thor Ragnarok though, and Stu designed a lot of the sky computer lighting effects for Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, really?
Huh.
Yeah. He designed some kind of program technique, especially in the scenes where Valkyrie's flying through the sky and you get that real kind of Jack Kirby sky. Yeah, it was all designed by Stu.
Who knew?
And obviously we know that there's a TV show based on this, as we've already mentioned, but for years they've been planning on making a sequel film based on the werewolves that we see.
Love. That would be fun, actually.
But it just, they've never, I think they still plan on doing it, but they've just never gotten around to it yet because Taika especially is very busy. He's a busy guy.
He's got a Star Wars movie coming
It was supposed to be called What We Do in the Moonlight, which would have been great. Now they're saying it's going to be called We're Wolves, which is more of a dad joke. But yeah, I don't know when they're going to get to it. And Rhys Darby and Taika Waititi have a new TV show called Our Flag Means Death.
Yes, that's on HBO Max.
Blackbeard, right? He's playing Blackbeard.
Taika is, right?
Taika,
and Rhys Darby is the gentleman pie. I love Rhys Darby. He every time I see this man, I laugh. I don't know what it is about him. He's just one of these people who consistently makes me laugh. He plays the Bushman in Hunt for the Wilder People, if you guys remember, the kind of weird prepper who lives in the middle of the forest, and he's hilarious. It's one of my favorite parts of that movie.
I also want to mention the theme song here and in the TV show You're Dead. I never knew who sang it, so I looked into it for this episode. It's Norma Tanega. And I was shocked that it was a woman that sang it. I just assumed it was a man. It sounds like a very manly singing voice, but it is a woman, and it's late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, I was going to say it's an older song.
Yeah. Yeah.
that they kind of discovered. And they did tell a little story about how they discovered it. One of the crew members was like collecting all of these sort of like Eastern European sounding music and like basically putting in a bucket for them to listen to later so that they could incorporate elements of it into the film. And then they found this song and they were like, this has to be the credit song.
Right.
And then they made all of that kind of archival stuff at the beginning. That not just the photos, obviously, but like even a lot of the drawings, Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi did themselves.
Oh.
Just because, low budget, they didn't have a lot of like people around to do stuff. So they're like, oh yeah, I sketched that. I did that. There's a bunch of stuff that they just made themselves on the fly.
All right. I hear that popcorn popping. What kind of buckets would we give to what we do in the shadows? Christina, you go first. This is, since this is one of your favorites, I know it's going to go high.
Sure is going to go high. It's going to go very high, but it won't be a 5 because I think Hunt for the Wilder People is Taika Waititi's best movie, which I did give a 5 to. So I'm going to say 4 3/4.
4 3/4.
I love this movie.
I'm probably going to be in the middle of you two, so I am going to go. Yep. I'm going to go 4 for what we do in the
that's
shadows.
Really high for you. Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. It just didn't work for me.
You didn't get it.
I know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can easily see this on repeat viewings, kind of getting into it. And maybe if I watch the TV show, I'm going to give it a 3. But I want to go back to your point of Rhys Darby because he hosts a podcast called The Cryptid Factor. Mm-hmm. And it is probably one of the funniest things I listen to on a weekly basis. And that's only when they put him out. They put him out very sparingly. His co-host Dan Schreiber in Two Buttons, and there's another guy, but he is hysterical.
Is it a spoof? Is it a spoof or is it?
No, it's basically just a bunch of guys sitting around, and what they do is they each come prepared with some cryptid news that they came across. But of course, like this show, they go down many, many rabbit holes. And Rhys Darby is known to, break into character voices. And it's just matter of fact, I was listening to it one day while I was out mowing the lawn. And I turned around and my wife is standing at the front door and she's just got her hands up in the air like, what are you doing? And so I took my earbuds out and apparently I was laughing so loud she could hear me over, like I was laughing like a maniac over the lawnmower. So yeah, my neighbors probably think I'm nuts, but
yeah, I don't know. I just think he's somehow like flown under the radar, I think, to the general public, but he's in a ton of stuff. And
yeah, he was on Wrecked. He was on that show that was a spoof of Lost kind of a thing, but he does pop up. And
speaking of X-Files again, I remember him being in a standalone when they rebooted the X-Files TV show not too long ago.
I just think he's like an unsung genius. I don't know. I really, really love him. And like, I would love to see a werewolf movie just for him.
Yeah, no, I would be on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
this is very exciting, what we're doing next week. Not only are we revisiting the book club series, but this is my pick for the book club series. And one of my favorite books from being a kid, maybe a tween, I could say, because I first got into this book when I was 12, 13 years old, Christine by Stephen King. So we will be reading the book, looking at the 1983 movie, and just like our discussion on Death of the Nile, we'll be talking about both. So please come back and join us.
My wife's not too happy I'm watching this movie, by the way. She'll have to leave the room.
Can you say that about most of the movies that you watch?
That is true also. It depends. The scarier stuff she doesn't like. If you think I don't like scary movies, she does not like scary movies. So, and I'm like, I don't remember Christine being scary. The book's not that scary. But she was very thrilled to curl up on the couch and have us read books together. So
I can't wait to talk about this because obviously, how can you not look at it reading the book very differently than I did when I was 13 years old. So some things that kind of just didn't occur to me then very much occur to me now. So I can't wait to have this discussion.
I can't wait to talk about it as well. This may be the first big novel book I've read in years. So you people are making me read.
We make you watch horror movies. We make you read books.
Well, no, I'm out on the Superior. I pulled down the poster this morning. That other one, the black and blood lace or whatever.
Blood and black lace.
Yeah, bye. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not even listening to that episode, by the way.
Sneak peek. We've got some Giallo coming up.
But you have to listen to that episode because I'm already preparing a history of Giallo for the uninitiated.
Yes.
So I'm really excited about that episode.
Well, I looked up the description of what a Giallo is.
Mm-hmm.
It's Italian horror films featuring excessive bloodletting, stylish camera work, and jarring musical arrangements.
Yeah.
Well, the bloodletting was more than I don't need to see the bloodletting. But that's not next week.
That's not next week.
That's future. That's future. That's like a month away.
It's in the planning stages at this point.
We're actually planning well ahead this time. So.
All right, everybody.
Well,
thanks for listening.
You very much.
Thank you.
Vengeance.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
It's got bats, dude. Bats.
There you go.